The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
And editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Pretty just glorious Saturday morning. Not a ton of wind. It's sunny. Some of us are going to go lose golf balls later. We'll see if Nebraska loses any more players to the portal. That window is still open for many. The news of the week dropped around 9:45 on Friday morning, and that was Casey Thompson off to the portal. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel. We'll spend some time with Gary Sharp. Mark Kraynak coming up in a little bit, get his take on some things. Elijah Herbel back in studio. Chris Schmidt can always jump in with us on the stream as you catch the weekend edition several different ways. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Get that subscription. The Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio, and KFOR, Facebook, and Twitter. Well, it was a little bit calmer overnight, Elijah. Not a ton to discuss when it comes to portal rounds 2 through 3 for the NFL draft. No Huskers taken. No trade.
I thought you were talking like some kid out there making a 1 a.m. portal announcement. Like, after much fair consideration, maybe a little drinking, I've decided to enter my name into the transfer.
No, there's
you're going NFL draft. Okay.
Yeah, there's no portal. There's no NFL draft. Husker news other than, hey, no Husker got drafted. So not good, but we'll see if that changes under Coach Rule with his acumen for NFL development. So the Casey Thompson is gone, and that is a real thing for Nebraska football fans. And we touched on a lot yesterday with the portal and Casey, and well wishes, because the guy really did give you his heart and soul last year, and played through a lot. He's been through a lot in his career, and he's a super talented guy. But when we talk about fit, it's so important. And stylistically, you really don't want to have separate offenses for separate quarterbacks with what you want to do. I think you find a way to keep him, but that just wasn't going to be possible. When we talk earning potential in NIL, I think he has got a monster opportunity to go make a couple $100,000 with either, and I don't know factually that Auburn or Florida are after him. It would surprise me if they're not, based on their quarterback situation, and have a chance to go make some money, some more money, and have a chance to come in and be the guy. There's a high probability that he gets beat out here in Lincoln. Welcome in, Mark Kraynak, for the weekend edition. Kraynak, how we doing, man? How's the coffee? How's the pup? How's your Saturday morning?
The coffee's finally brewed. It takes a little bit. So, and then the dog had to go out like he often does. He eats and drinks throughout the day. You can imagine what that leads to. And he just has to. So that made me a little late.
To the portal.
Yeah, it made me a little bit late today, but yeah, we were both just out there just kind of lamenting the loss of Casey, as I know you're just talking about. I think it's devastating. Can we be honest? Like, now, maybe devastating is not the right word, because I don't expect Nebraska to be great.
But
so
does that upset the apple cart for your 2023 expectations, your projections? Was he kind of a security blanket for you? Does it change your outlook?
Dude, I thought he was going to win the job.
Okay.
That's where I was. He apparently did.
Over Sims.
I mean, I thought that once they actually were competing side by side, and the way that Casey, at least the way that Satterfield was talking about, offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield was talking about how Casey was taking the mental reps and was there all the time and was learning the offense and was still engaged, I think he was going to be an impressive guy to them. And something for Sims to compare to, because I don't think Sims really has. There's a lot of quarterbacks there, but
does he have a true challenger?
Right. You're talking about two dudes that have started double-digit games at the Division I level, right? That was Sims and Thompson. So great situation. I was like, yes, you have these two guys that are veterans that both could reasonably be starters, are going to be really pushing each other. Like where's Casey going to land? I'd imagine he will land at a school of sort of like equal or more caliber than Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. I think he ends up at Auburn.
Well, there you go. That's what I'm saying. Well, so a guy that Auburn's after in the SEC, that's probably an 8-9 game winner, something like that.
And Mark, one of the things that I keep coming back to it with Casey Thompson is it's not a question of his talent. Like, yeah, he can go start at Florida. He can go start at Auburn. And I'm sure there's a handful of Power 5 schools out there that want a quarterback like Casey Thompson. As you mentioned, double-digit starts at a Power 5 level at a place like Texas and Nebraska, where you have incredible fan support, but also incredible pressure. That is battle-tested to a college coach. And I don't doubt that Casey Thompson, I said this on the show yesterday, I'll say it again today, I don't doubt that Casey Thompson could have gone and beat out Jeff Sims for that job. I think Casey Thompson's a competitor. I think he's a very smart quarterback. I think that quarterback competition this fall would have been very fun. But one of the things that I am still getting used to, I'm sure we're all getting used to in the transfer portal era of college football, is that if you're a quarterback with double-digit starts under your belt, you don't go somewhere to sit. And whenever I look at that Nebraska offense, it is more well-tailored for a quarterback from what I saw in the spring game, like Jeff Sims and his Casey Thompson. So I think Casey Thompson said, I can go win this job, but this offense is not one that's going to show off my strong suit. So I'm going to go somewhere that will, because it's my last year of eligibility. I want to get a shot in the pros. So I'm going to go somewhere that not only can I get a more guaranteed opportunity to start, but I'm going to get an offense that is going to fit my strengths better. I'm going to put on for the NFL coaches for 1 year, and then I'm going to go see if I can get my shot in the NFL. Whenever I look at it that way, I go, yeah, that's the era of college football we're in now. If you have double-digit starts under your belt, you're not sticking around to be a backup.
Fair. You're definitely not sticking around to be a backup. But the one comment there that I don't agree with, and I want to hear where you're coming from, is the offense being tailored to him or fitting him. Mm-hmm. To me, that's one thing I like about Casey is I kind of feel like any offense would, right? Because he's fast enough, he's mobile enough, he can throw the deep ball, he's good with the short ball, he's got good sort of intangible leadership qualities on the field in general. Like, what offense isn't good for him? Is I guess my point.
I think it comes down to what Casey wants and likes to do. I think when you look at this Matt Rule, Marcus Satterfield offense, they need a quarterback who is going to be a willing runner, a quarterback who is willing to put his nose in, put it on the line for the team, stick his shoulder down, get a first down. And I'm not saying Casey can't do that. I don't think that's what Casey wants to showcase for the NFL teams. I don't think that's the strong suit of his game, getting outside, taking a zone read for himself, making a man miss and getting 10 yards. Can Casey do it? Hell yeah, I think Casey can do it. Do I think that's what Casey wants to do in college? No, I think he's a guy who wants to air it out. We saw that last season. He's a guy who wants to throw the football. He wants to show off his arm. Not that that's a good or a bad thing. I think he is a pass-first quarterback, and I think Matt Rule wants a guy that is going to be more willing to be run first at times whenever a game plan calls for it. And I'm not saying Casey can't do it. I'm just saying from what I saw last year, what I saw from him at Texas, I don't think that's what Casey wants to do.
Talk about comfort level, guys. And we know Casey's comfortable on the 3, 5, and 7-step drop, right? We know he loves that, or he's in shotgun. We know that he was comfortable with Trey Palmer.
Yep.
He's got some new guys aside from Washington around him. So there's that. You're behind the 8 ball because of your shoulder surgery this year. So you just had a lot of ground to make up. And it may be easier to go win a job somewhere else or not even have to go compete for a job. There's a place out there that's going to be like, dude, you've got $1 billion starts at 2 Power 5 football factories. Come be the quarterback here. And here's $200,000, by the way, or $500,000 or whatever NIL would command for him versus just the reality of the 10 to 15 carries a game. And listen, Whip and Casey were a match, pass first offense, right? I don't think we can say that Nebraska's offense here for 2023 with Satterfield, while it is pro style, while they will huddle, while they will use a fullback, right? They, I think they are going to be run first. I mean, that's going to be the emphasis. They may have some games where they throw it more than run it, but the point being is their emphasis, what they want to be really good at is running the football. And to do that in the Big Ten, Nebraska is going to need some quarterback run to it. I think Casey would do it. I just think from a comfort standpoint, he's way more comfortable dropping back and throwing than scooting on the outs and scrambling on a designed quarterback run. Durability is real big. There's a reason he didn't get a chance to have much of a say on the field this spring, and it was because of availability with that injury.
And Sims has been injured before too, which is why I like
having both would have been incredible, right? But it was a luxury.
It would have. It was.
It's a luxury you don't see much in college football anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to maintain it, but it is a devastating blow, I believe. Just because now you look at what's behind Sims. Well, love Harburg and Purdy athleticism, but man, they're not the most accurate passers.
Right.
I guess right now. Maybe they'll change. I'm not.
Can you win ball games? Can you win ball games with their arm? Not solely at this point right now, but their legs come into the discussion point, right? Their dual threat ability.
Tommy Frazier was the most accurate quarterback out there either. Nebraska still won a hell of a lot of games with Tommy Frazier starting at quarterback. So that being said, this
rushing for $395 a game helped.
This roster is not built the same as a Tommy Frazier-led roster. I will admit that, but I don't know.
Right.
And a point I made yesterday, Mark, that I think we'll get a great idea of what the coaching staff thinks of what they have behind Jeff Sims based on if they go after a transfer portal quarterback here in the next month. So that's what I'm going to be very curious to see. Do they trust Harburg as the backup, or they want to go get a guy that they can bring in, be their guy, quote unquote, to come be the backup next season and maybe the quarterback in waiting? I lean towards they're not going to go do that whenever you look at scholarship numbers and what they have said during spring football about what they like in Heinrich Harburg. I don't get that feel, but also it's college football. And at the end of the day, you have to win football games. And that would be a hard choice you'd have to make to go out and get another quarterback. That's what I'm curious to see.
Yeah. It will tell you a lot. I'll tell you, us sitting here, like if you're a Rule, what are you doing? I'm bringing in a portal guy. Competition. If he'll come, I'm not saying he'll come, but I'm open to it. I'm open to a Casey Thompson-esque or Jeff Sims-esque. If that player's available and interested, let's go. Bring him in. Which is honestly one of my biggest criticisms of the Frost era that we talked about a bunch. Got to go way back. I want to be like told you so guy here, but like with Burrow, right? Do you remember that infamous response from Frost where he's like, you think he's better than what we got? My thought is, I don't know. Bring him in and find out. Mm-hmm. If he's interested, you're just going to be like, well, nope, because we got Adrian, and Adrian is better than Joe. So why would we bring in Joe when Adrian is better than Joe? Like, bring in Joe, see if Joe really is not as good as it. Like, that's what
but you've already painted yourself into a corner of multiple times right now saying, I like our guys, I want to coach our guys up. We're not going into the portal. It's not that he's going to shut it down, but he's not going to be actively looking to go find a quarterback.
I disagree with that. I think I don't want to say you have to say what you have to say in front of the media, but he didn't say I'm not going to go into the portal. He said I'm focused on my guys right now. And that being said, like every coach in college football has to know what the reality of modern college football is. And that's that.
I'm not saying he's going to shut it down, but the narrative right now is he's not going to be Rule's not going to be actively looking for another quarterback. And he's got to be comfortable with that quarterback room. Guys that have been in college a while, you just haven't seen them flash on game day. I mean, we saw Purdy start a couple of different games. He's had some moments, but they went away from some of his strengths. Can he get his confidence up throwing the football? And then the Harburg, man, I was juiced to see him last Saturday, and I loved his attack on the ground. But from a throwing standpoint, just one ball game, one practice, but 2-9 for -1. I mean, you didn't get to see anything throwing the football from him.
When you pass, Heinrich, we lose yards. This is like at a bare minimum, when you decide to pass, you do have to gain positive yardage. My God. That's what I'm saying. Like, what is that? 9 attempts to make the ball go that way. And 9 attempts, you go backwards a yard. That's something's wrong there. Something's wrong there. I don't know
what, but
oh yeah, I'm not quite sure. There must be some sort of breakdown on our approach here. That's
one
rough.
thing I got to do this weekend is catch up with the Matt Rule podcast. He sat down with, I think his name was Brandon Marcello. He's a national college football guy, but he touches on a bunch of things with Nebraska when it comes to innovation, the offense going old school, Texas's importance. You know, his old team, Carolina, picking number 1 in the NFL draft, getting Bryce Young at quarterback. So, NFL draft weekend, and
that one's got a sting for Matt Rule. Like, hey, all your years in Carolina, we never gave you a quarterback. Hope you enjoyed playing with Baker Mayfield. And then as soon as you're gone, they go and get the number 1 overall quarterback in the draft, and and you go get Bryce Young. That one's got to sting just a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of Cam Newton. We're going to go
Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
Sam Darnold, 2 retreads.
Bless Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I like Sam.
But bless him for just pulling off this career for as long as he has. You know,
well, he keeps getting shot because he's got arm talent and he looks like Dwight.
See, some of those guys like Chase Daniel.
Chase is pushing 40 and he's made a boatload of money
and maybe played 70 meaningful snaps in his career.
The dreaded booger eater, as you dubbed him back in 2007.
I didn't do that. He ate a booger. He dubbed himself that. Right.
Quick story here. Quick story.
This is Missouri's backup quarterback. Yeah,
and I want to go quickly to get away from Missouri's backup quarterback. No offense, but you mentioned Sam Darnold, and before we get too far away from that, just a quick aside. I met this one dude at UNL that he was from California originally. He's like, oh yeah, back in high school, like my best friend was Sam Darnold, so I'm a big USC fan now. And I totally called BS. I'm like, no way, dude. And then he pulls up a picture of him like 2 weeks before hanging out with Sam Darnold at Coachella. And I'm like, never mind. I take it back. You were best friends with Sam Darnold in high school. Cool.
What did he say about Dwight Schrute Jr.?
Nice guy. Really liked him. Thought he was going to do well once he made it to the NFL. This was back when Sam Darnold was still in college. So we didn't know the NFL future of Sam Darnold just yet. I think this was 1 year before the draft, maybe. And anyway, he's a nice guy. I mean, they're good friends. Nice, lovely parents, apparently.
That's why you listen to this show. Because on this show, we know people that are friends with journeyman NFL quarterbacks. And you're not going to get that on most shows. I don't think. I met a guy once who was also friends with the backup catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates AA team. So that's what I bring to the table. I'm not, not trying to name drop or anything, but I'm just saying I can relate with what you're saying there, Elijah. And it's life changing. Don't treat us any different, though. You know what I mean? Like we're the same people.
Yeah, we're the friends of celebrities.
Yeah.
Are we still going?
It gets embarrassing sometimes.
I had to let the pups out there. So, are we getting into the touches of greatness? Bumping into famous people. Is that what we're getting into?
Yeah. Like, Elijah met a guy.
His boys with a guy removed from Sam Darnold. Okay.
Yeah, right. And I met this guy that was friends with the backup catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates AA team.
Oh, double A.
So, yeah. He was mainly the bullpen guy.
Important role.
Yeah, super important. He probably caught a couple major leaguers in that stint, probably.
Schmidt met,
and I met the dude that knows him.
Yeah, Schmidt met Ricky. Didn't Ricky Henderson try to hit on your mom, Schmidt?
Jose Canseco.
Jose Canseco tried to hit on your mom. That's right.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we all went to the Royals growing up, right?
Yeah.
And this is in the heyday of the Bash Brothers era, Kraynak.
Oh, so the steroids are on fleek at this point.
Well,
it's straight injections right into the spinal cord.
Everyone looks in shape. Okay. And
yeah.
Mom and Dad had always let us, we'd stay usually like downtown Kansas City, but all the teams would stay in that Adams Mark hotel that overlooked the interstate right by Kauffman Stadium.
I want to say there was a Shoney's attached there, but I could be wrong.
There was, and there was kind of a bar at the basement or like underground level where you would park.
Perfect.
And yeah, the White Sox were there, so you got to meet Frank Thomas and Lance Johnson, which was cool. But when my brother and I were kids, yeah, the A's were there, and it was just a super crowded hotel bar, and Canseco's there, and my mom's sitting at the bar, my dad's, I guess, putting her out for bait. I don't know. to attract autographs for us. That's how it felt. Then my mom's sitting there having a margarita. Canseco walks up, and he's just trying to get a beer. And Canseco's got this birthmark on his right palm, or the back of his right hand. I shouldn't say not palm, but it looks like a giant mole. All right, and it's super hairy. So, but yeah, he was there. He's like, "Hi, how are you?" He was very pleasant to my mom. He didn't really hit on her, but I kind of slide in there. "Hey, sir, will you sign this?" And yeah, we got an autograph when we were 10 years old. Ricky Henderson went third person in the elevator. It was just me and my little brother and Ricky Henderson going from first floor to 10th floor, and he just stared straight. "Sir, can you sign this, Ricky?" Ricky tired. Ricky doesn't want to sign autograph right now. He went third person, and Dave Stewart was great. Mark McGuire was a goon, so he was not interested.
Yeah.
Sorry. I hope that entertained some. But yeah.
See who we all talked about, who we met,
Always love Jose.
I'm just saying I may or may not have met people like Mickey Mantle and Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. back on the baseball card circuit during the autograph.
Did you?
Thanks, Dad.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Dad. We used to do that. Yeah, we used to go to Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. on the same ball, actually.
Wow.
I have Mantle and DiMaggio on the same ball.
Nice. We had both of those as well. Not on the same ball. Yeah, your
dad has the mother of all baseball collections. I've got Griffey and Willie Mays and Mantle and DiMaggio, but your dad has a wall of.
They've been reduced.
A wall of wow is what I'm going to call it.
He's reduced the stock since then, but there's still some good ones out there. That's the whole thing. See, actually, Elijah, we cheated a little bit, like in terms of rubbing elbows with the people.
You paid to do it.
When you went to the baseball card circuit and the autograph, it would literally be a row of Hall of Famers at a table. And you're like,
4, 5.
Yep.
It's $50
over there. That's boring. Let's go over
150 to get in. Don't tell my accountant nor the IRS about the cash envelope we got to do this show and then not report it.
Oh, of course not. Yeah. Pete Rose even. Oh yeah.
Good old Pete.
Yeah, folks used to come to the Fireman's Hall in Omaha too. Like Juan Gonzalez came there one time. Gary Sheffield too.
Ooh.
Sheffield had like he had like a gold and diamond teeth thing going on.
That's the front two teeth. Yes.
He had Mr. T style chains going on. He was like, "What is up? I'm here to sign some balls and make my money, and I'm out." It was good.
I like
real
how
good.
We started this conversation with poor Matt Rule. He got shafted with Sam Darnold, and now we've reached this. But
we're now reminiscing on our baseball collection. Let me tell you about my 88 score baseball card collection.
Did you get the Mark Grace rookie?
Probably, but let's go ahead and lament the fact that Score kind of trashed the entire baseball market. Everything was going great. Score comes in, floods everything. It's commoditized. All the prices drop. At that point, I was out, and I just decided to go through junior high and high school. And now looking back, still got all these 88 score. You can sell the whole set for like $27. It's like, come on.
Got 87 tops. Yeah, the Barry Bonds rookie year. So back to football.
Not where it's at.
Back to football.
Not where it's at.
Yeah. Back to football. Well, Vogues can chime in on this too.
Yeah, good.
Because he was a baseball card guy, and he might be an autograph guy. We know our dear friend Gary Sharple has some stories about bumping into greats. But Kraynak, to put a bow on some spring football thoughts, we know that. Yeah. And listen, your take on Casey leaving, possibly being detrimental, is not wrong.
Is he going to pull a Jamari Butler, by the way? Like, that's possible, isn't it? It's not going to happen. Go into the portal, come out of the portal. Like,
we're supposed to talk with Charles Tuesday, Thompson. So we'll see if we get an answer or a landing spot.
He's got some splaining to do. You call them to the carpet. You're like, what about loyalty? Things like that.
Well, there's no such thing.
And let's not forget here that, and this is my opinion, I don't have any inside information here. Like, Casey still needs to get a waiver if he wants to go be eligible anywhere else next season. So we know how the NCAA works. I feel like that could be a possibility if Casey wants to come back, because I feel like that'd probably be most likely. He goes to the NCAA and they say, no waiver for you, which I consider pretty unlikely considering the fact that he's already a graduate. He's used one transfer, so that means he does need to get himself a waiver. I was doing some research yesterday. Despite the fact that he's a grad transfer, he still does need to get a waiver. But considering there was a coaching change, the NCAA pretty much recently has set the precedent of there's a coaching change, we'll give you a blanket waiver no matter what if there's a coaching change during the offseason. So that's unlikely, but I feel like that's probably the only way Casey would come back. Once you announce on Twitter that you're coming back and then you end up putting your name in the transfer portal 4 months later, I feel like you don't change your mind yet again and come back and say, you know what, never mind. I was right back in February, not in May. I do want to be back here in Nebraska.
Or is it leverage that he's trying to pull right now
for more NIL?
He's trying to play that Cinderella song, Don't know what you got, right? Till it's gone. I think that might be happening here.
Thank you.
That could be happening.
Brandon
Vogel at that point, Brandon is like, for those that are not watching,
stared through you.
Yeah. For folks that are not watching on the stream,
I'm gone.
Yeah, at the point where 80s hair bands,
absolutely gone. Yeah. Vogues wasn't having it. He didn't like the tone.
He just ejected,
and he did not want anything to do with your karaoke tribute. So poor Vogues, and we'll let him explain himself on this shortly.
It was well timed though, with the song of what I said.
He
don't know what you got till it's gone, and then Brandon's gone.
Vogues always does a Thursday hit with us. This is pre-Casey Thompson news. And he's got his little guy on his lap, his little boy. And Vogues is like, I avoided being a meme just by the hair on my chin, because I guess Junior ended up just yakking everywhere right after he was done with his video hit.
Hey, Brandon Vogel now rejoins our quad box here. Brandon, I don't know if you heard me. I just started singing Cinderella, and I said, "Don't know what you got till it's gone." And the second I say that, you disappeared. So I appreciate the coordination there. It worked well.
Well, I'm happy to have contributed. Sad that I missed the song though.
Oh, you did miss it. That's probably why you left. Yeah, it happened simultaneously. It was great. So the son of an Oklahoma Sooner transfer as a Texas Longhorn, lo and behold, isn't trustworthy to stay at Nebraska. Shocked?
Wow.
Are we? Comments on that? Who could have seen that coming? We let a mole in the building, and what,
My God, Kraynak.
That's a Sooner and a Longhorn.
Is that a voodoo doll behind you too? I mean,
jeez. Let's let a Sooner and a Longhorn into North Stadium. That ought to go great. A lot of. What do you think about that, Brandon?
I think they are winless without him last year. So thank you, Casey.
Yeah, I think Casey broke the streak of Nebraska's 8 consecutive seasons losing to Iowa. So thank you, Casey.
Yeah, Vogel, you
do that.
Vogel, you jump in here. I'll shut up.
Well, I think even having a quarterback battle at this point is kind of like the ultimate luxury. It's like when you go out for a really nice dinner and you're like, wow, that was really a lot. And I mean, we didn't even get a quarterback battle really in the spring. We're kind of pointed towards one in the summer, but it always felt a little bit, I don't know. I wouldn't say it was unlikely. It just felt like unstable. Are you really going to have two guys who have both started a lot of football games at this point in their career, duking it out, and have the luxury of a player like that basically backing somebody else up? It doesn't seem like the way college football works anymore. So, it felt like, boy, if Nebraska can get through the summer with that being the case, it would be pretty fortunate. They didn't, obviously. Wish Casey Thompson well, wherever he finds a home. And for a player like him, I mean, if I were a quarterback at this point, I would wait until after spring to transfer, because I think the market is such that these teams go through their own kind of QB battles, and it's really a seller's market at that point. So I'll be interested to see where he ends up.
I mean, look at Alabama as an example, Brandon. They make it through spring football and they immediately turn around and go get in Notre Dame's backup last season. If you remember him blowing the game, I believe that was against was that Marshall? I think that was the game he started where he threw a couple picks and ended up getting benched. And then Tommy Rees goes off to Alabama, and following spring football, he follows him because saw the writing on the wall, wasn't going to start at Notre Dame, and Alabama's looking for a quarterback. So look at that. Like, that's not a guy that you'd expect to go off to Alabama, but Alabama realizes it's a seller's market. They need a quarterback in spring football, and you go to Notre Dame's backup. How weird is that to say?
Yeah, I mean, not surprised to see him link back up with Tommy Rees. And I mean, he was Notre Dame's starter last season, and until he got injured, which kind of put a dent in that Notre Dame team pretty significantly in my mind. And then they kind of recruited over him, so to speak. Got a high profile transfer from Wake Forest, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So now Alabama gets to add, because I think they played 3 quarterbacks in their spring game. So might as well throw a fourth in there and just let it sort itself out. It's wild when you stop and actually look at it.
It kind of tells you a little bit, I think, about the importance of NIL overall. It is a factor, but if it was the only factor, Casey ain't going anywhere, right? So it's not maybe as big of a deal. And maybe you can't say that for every player, but the second he got here, it's like, Ernie's in Ceresco, hooked me up with this apartment. Like he had deals set up. He had a nice apartment too, probably a nice car. Got injured, got great medical care. Like a lot of investment and money went Casey's way, and it still wasn't enough for him to stick around.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It'll be interesting to watch if that changes as we get a little deeper into it. Because right now it's like, these are kind of the patient zeros for college's NIL era, where they're like, well, we can get money now. This is great. But thinking back to when I was 20, 21, 22, didn't really have a great sense about the difference between X amount of dollars and Y amount of dollars. Which is like, I've got some money. That's nice and that's good. So maybe it won't.
I can purchase items.
Yeah. So maybe that'll change, but I think just dealing with this age group, it's probably not going to be factor number one in terms of where guys go. They might be in where they go, but I don't think it will be in where they stay.
Well, Brandon, and not to jump ahead of you, Schmidt, here, but
it's all good.
We were talking with this with Brady Oltmans about the whole NIL factor with Nebraska yesterday, and I want to get your take on, do we have an idea on how well Nebraska truly stacks up in NIL in terms of what the rest of the country is doing, because it seems like every school and every conference is kind of doing this in their own way, where you think of the SEC being the home of the collectives, and you're going to go get $1 million to go play in the SEC. And I don't think the Big Ten necessarily subscribes to that notion. You've seen a lot of Big Ten teams kind of take their hands off of NIL, especially when you look at some of the big dogs with Ohio State and Michigan. Like, NIL is not the reason why you're going there. I mean, they're obviously going to take care of you, but how does Nebraska stack up with some of these other powerhouses in terms of NIL? Because that was assumed to be a huge selling factor for Nebraska, and it's kind of hard to get true numbers on what every school in the country is doing.
Yeah. I honestly have no idea how Nebraska stacks up, and it's becoming something of a white whale for me, because we have no idea of really how anyone is doing in the country. Like, we hear about kind of the biggest deals that are out there for, a Bryce Young last year or things like that. But all we really know is that I bet Ohio State's doing pretty well. Like, I bet Georgia's fine. I bet Nebraska is fine. But in terms of like showing that, kind of putting some data to those, just notions at this point, it's really a closed box. And not only is it a closed box, but it's a box with a lot of different interests in there who all want to make it seem like as big a box as possible. It serves everyone. If it's like, players are just, anything you want now, you can do it if you're at one of these powerhouse programs. So we'll see if that changes. I know, Brady and I have talked about this between just the two of us. He's talked to some other people who are in the industry, and there's a little bit of frustration there too, that it's all kind of operating in this gray market that we don't know all that much about at this point.
Brendan Vogel is with us, Hail Varsity managing editor, hailvarsity.com and magazine. Subscribe. The Hail Varsity double play there is the digital platform and the magazine. It's hailvarsity.com/offer, and get your subscription now. The YouTube channel is awesome. Really love Brady Oltman's live chat for a couple 3 hours yesterday about the portal. He was on, and then you catch us. So, Vogues, when we talk backups in the quarterback room, we know it's thinned out quite a bit since we talked last Saturday. Last Saturday, we were excited about the spring game. Some of us were waiting for the spring game to end just because. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't super enthralling.
Some of us were tired of watching fumbles.
Yeah, and when we talk about the backup here, Purdy and Harburg, what stood out for you with each, and do you have a lead if push came to shove and Sims is not the guy for whatever reason? Who do you think can emerge? I'm going to say, I don't know, man. I think maybe Pretty, because of some more starting experience compared to Harburg, but Pretty still hasn't stabilized yet either.
Yeah. What stood out to me from the spring game amongst those now two top contenders for the backup spot, presumably, the lack of passes completed is what stood out to me. Not to be too harsh, but I mean, really, like, outside of Sims, Richard Torres, I think, completed 50% of his passes, had the most attempts, also down in the portal. And beyond that, it was rough going. I mean, I think Harburg's athleticism and his ability to run the football certainly stands out. And so it could be one of those scenarios where if a Sims, presumed starter, were to go down in a game, it might be a little bit situational, based on the opponent, based on kind of the game state. But broadly, I would go with you, Schmidt. I think Purdy's experience probably wins out if Nebraska's looking at a situation where your number 2 quarterback has to start a couple weeks in a row.
Is there by the way, just doing some looking on the 1890 initiative and NIL, just as we were talking about that, I just went down a little rabbit hole here, and it's going to be pretty interesting because, like, ProPublica has like a nonprofit explorer where you can just go in and look at any 501c3. Brandon nodding his head because I'm sure you're very well aware of that. But the way the 1890 initiative is set up, which is interesting, is that if you're a business and you donate, you're donating to an LLC. So you're not donating, you're actually contributing to an LLC, which is a business, right? If you're a fan, those contributions go to a foundation. So fast forward a year or so, everybody has to file their taxes. Every nonprofit does, and then ProPublica is one place that you can find all nonprofits across the country whenever you want. It's just one of the kind of transparency rules out there. So you'll get some partial in publicly available information, but it's going to take a bit because you can file taxes late. You're obviously a year behind. 1890 really just started coming online this past like halfway through last year type thing. So it might be another year from now that you can see what they did in 2022 basically. And that's only half the story because the other half is from businesses going to the business instead of to the foundation part.
Which is why, just reading about NIL broadly, like there's been a push at some universities, and again, it all kind of has to happen like on the sly to get some of these collectives not to register as a 501c3 for that very reason, because then you open yourself up to being to that level of transparency. So it's just bizarre that the kind of weird market college football has created for this. And we're all just kind of stumbling our way along, trying to figure it out.
Brandon Vogel's with us here. It's a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, we have a question in for this stream. This comes from Jacques, excuse me if I don't know how to pronounce your name. The young walk-on quarterback. I think that's referring to Jack Wash, the freshman walk-on from he was previously at Ole Miss. Before that, he was at IMG Academy, now not walking on with Nebraska. Brandon, I don't know all that much about him. Not sure if you do. Do you think he factors into the quarterback competition at all this season?
I'd be surprised. Played at IMG, obviously a very high level of high school football. Went to Ole Miss, which whatever you think about Lane Kiffin, his offenses are pretty good. So you feel pretty good about at least the level of instruction he got there. And, the fact is this coaching staff took him as a walk-on for a reason. But he seems like a player who, just in terms of the time that he's been in the college game, there's a good amount of catching up to do. Didn't see a ton of him in the spring game, which, probably backs up a little bit of where he is in the pecking order right now. That said, three guys that were presumably in front of him just have left this week. So, he got closer to being a factor, no matter what happened there. So it's a nice option to have. I mean, Nebraska is well acquainted with walk-ons, of course, but don't see a ton of them coming from formerly at an SEC school. Though I guess I am hip did, though South Carolina was independent then.
Well played.
But I digress. Brandon, I mean, we're a week away from the spring game, a week removed from it, I should say. And I'm sure you've talked about it at length by this point, but here we are a week later, looking back on the memory of that red-white game. Did you walk away with any concern about maybe the lack of explosive plays? Did you walk away with some encouragement that the defense can create havoc plays? Like what were some of the bigger things that stood out to you from observing that game last week? It was kind of an uneventful game for the most part.
Yeah, it was for the most part. I didn't think the offense looked that well oiled, and maybe it shouldn't at this point. Overall, the lack of explosive plays. I mean, 21-7 in a spring game, like. Maybe Nebraska is going to try and win that way in the Big Ten. A lot of teams do win that way in the Big Ten, but I would be a little bit surprised. I felt like the running game, like if you go back and look at the spring game stats, it's like nothing that jumps off the page for you. But I thought some of kind of the attitude and edge was there, which was encouraging. And then defensively, the havoc plays did stand out. I mean, I think they had 18 tackles for loss between the two teams. So and without a couple of guys who have played a lot of football defensively for Nebraska, so that'll be interesting. Like, I mean, if you can create those plays consistently, and it's kind of one of the traits or features of this defensive scheme. That's a pretty big help. You can end some drives that way. So we'll see. Lack of explosive plays is always going to be a big one, and they're tough to get in the Big Ten.
Brandon, one of the things I've struggled with in the past week is along the same lines of Mark. Whenever you look at that offense, the lack of explosive plays, putting the football on the ground, how inconsistent they were through the air. I don't want to sound too harsh here, but as of right now, that offense is bad. And I think there's potential for them to be good. I think there's potential for them to be good even this season. But whenever you look at their performance on Saturday, like what do bad offenses do? They turn the ball over. They are unable to move the ball down the field, whether it be with consistent 3 to 4 yards of pop rushing or through a splash play that then gets you down into the red zone. That's what good offenses do. And Nebraska wasn't able to do those things. So whenever I look at the defense, I find it very hard to evaluate because I truly believe that offense they were going up against. Now it's early in install. It's early in a new coaching regime, but as of right now, it's just bad. So I found it hard to take too many takeaways from that spring game, knowing the fact that Nebraska's offense is still behind the 8 ball and there's still a lot of work to be done for this to be a Power 5 college football offense.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. Generally speaking, this doesn't make for great radio, but I think the fewer takeaways you have from a spring game is probably the better place to be. I mean, there's just so many kind of complications with, that being a big one. No matter what happens, it could have been the inverse. If the offense looked great and the defense didn't, does it tell you more about the offense or tell you more about Nebraska's defense? It's always that kind of balancing act with the spring game. So try to focus on a couple of things that really catch your eye. And other than that, it's a very limited preview. It's not even a trailer. It's like a teaser trailer. You get 1 minute of what Nebraska football will be in the fall, and good luck to you deciding what things will be 6 months later.
It's easy to fall into the overreaction, though, to your take, Elijah, and you're not wrong with what you saw. You're like, dear God, what are they going to be good at? What are they okay to do? I look at Kemp, I look at Sims, okay, I can go, yeah, they'll be all right. I look at Washington. I mean, and then the running game. I thought Grant looked awesome. Now, awesome in the context of a spring game, but he looked explosive. He looked like a different dude on the field.
And one of the points that Damon Bidding brought up, our colleague Damon Bidding brought up on the broadcast as I was driving out to go umpire, was that Anthony Grant, one of the things that he did a lot better in Damon's eyes in the spring game was he got vertical as he was making his
dancing.
And even whenever he was making a move in the hole, whenever he made that move, he was getting 1 or 2 yards of forward progress in making that cut. And that's one of the things that really impressed Damon in terms of what Anthony Grant did better is even whenever it wasn't there, whenever he had to make a move and make a man miss, he was still getting vertical while doing that.
Vogues, I want to go here real quick. The counter game, not only the quarterback counter game with the run, but Grant on a lot of his carries, if memory serves, had misdirection. He was getting downhill with the counter. I thought Nebraska looked pretty crisp doing that. I thought whoever pulled was mobile and agile and then hostile, right, at the line of scrimmage. And then you had Grant make some nice cuts off of that. But I think Nebraska is going to be a team that goes to the counter. I think that could be a lot of fun for the run game.
I think it could. I think it would be a lot of fun for me as well. Love a good counter. We talk about Osborne era and the option. Of course, it's the first thing that comes to mind. Nebraska's best play, in my opinion, best running play was probably counter.
Jones.
I mean, you can go back and you look at some of those year-end recaps, and like they're averaging like 7-8 yards a play on those counter plays. So bring that back if you've got, and you know, this kind of ties in a little bit, I think, with the focus on the offensive line of, you know, maybe we don't need to add more bulk to these guys who are already 6'7", 6'8". Maybe it's time to trim down a little bit. You know, that's the sort of stuff you can do if you've got mobile offensive linemen. So we'll see. And I think you're on the right track. You know, Schmidt, the spring game is good for getting a sense for individual players. And they can be returning players. You know, MJ Sherman was a guy who I was like, he looks like, I think, what you hoped you were getting from a Georgia linebacker. So those things do kind of stand out from the spring game. It's a lot easier to do that than to be like, you know, to come up with some big statements about an offense or a defense.
You know, Casey Thompson's transfer, or his entry into the portal, obviously the headliner of all the folks that are entering the portal, but there's been a few more. Would you rank Stephon Wynn's entry into the portal as maybe the second biggest deal for Nebraska overall?
I would, because I thought that's another name. I thought he had a good spring game on that second unit defensively, you know, which probably is contributed to him putting his name in the portal. But, you know, I came out of the spring game thinking he played well, and boy, is it nice to have that if he is, you know, I guess, second on the depth chart there in the middle at this point. That's a pretty good player who could if that's second on your depth chart. And you know, it's we talk about it a lot with quarterback, but it's really every position. Like if you've got a guy who's really good, but somebody's just better than them, it's tough. It's going to be really hard to build depth, and we'll see what happens with college football as it continues to go on.
Brandon, whenever you look at the whole Stephon Wynn situation, I rank it as probably the second most impactful transfer we've seen this far, only behind Casey Thompson, just because the quarterback position is such a premium. But I thought it was more surprising than the Casey Thompson news of entering the transfer portal, just with how college football is now. That, you know what, if you're an experienced quarterback, you're not going to be a starter. Usually you go find somewhere else that is going to give you maybe not a guarantee, but a better chance at being a starter. But with the Wynn situation, do you think this is a case of his playing time is going to be impacted whenever Ty Robinson comes back, and he maybe saw himself getting pushed down to that third unit defensive line? Because that's really the only thing that I can see here that makes sense in terms of why he would leave. I don't think NIL, especially with a defensive lineman, is going to be the biggest factor. Maybe he just wants to get closer to home for the end of his college career. But that's the only thing that really made sense to me, was maybe Ty Robinson was going to push him out of some playing time this fall.
Yeah, I think that could be a piece of it. It could also just be, you know, a little bit of different timelines for a player like that. You know, you go to an Alabama, everybody they sign doesn't just have NFL aspirations. They probably have NFL, you know, they probably should end up in the NFL if you're signing with Alabama out of high school. Didn't quite, you know, transferred to Nebraska. And if it's looking like he's going to be, you know, basically the second line there for that defensive line, and you're not going to get snaps, like, you got to think about a place that's going to get you ready to have your name called this weekend a year from now. So I think that could be a piece of it too.
Vogues, call your shot before we say goodbye. Trey Palmer lands where?
Ooh.
I have no idea. I think he'll go in the. I think he'll go in the fourth round, but in terms of pick number, where he ends up, not quite sure. But the speed is Raiders.
Raiders. Is he fast? Take him. Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were going to take him last night because they even picked a wide receiver whose first name was Trey. And they started announcing, and I go, that's the perfect Raiders pick. And then it wasn't Trey Palmer. It was the receiver from Cincinnati, Trey something. Not Trey Turner. That's the baseball guy. I can't remember the guy's name. I thought it was him. So now I'm crossing my fingers that the Broncos take him. They took Marvin Mims yesterday, but they could still use another wide receiver.
How about those Illini and Hawkeyes? 7 picks between the two in the first 3 rounds. Some pretty good football players in the Big Ten West.
Witherspoon was a 0-star, fellas. 5th overall.
Really?
Yeah. I love that. That kid was really fun to watch, and he beat the hell out of people. Illinois, Lovey and Brett had a nice little combo job on recruiting and developing and then enhancing. I mean, it was something. And then Jack Campbell, I mean, I know we're not supposed to like root for Iowa, but that kid's awesome. Super athletic. Yeah. Love watching him ball. I didn't know he was 6'5" and as fast as he was, but Detroit got a great one. I think he could be a really, really good middle linebacker.
And how about the Broncos trading up for a white cornerback? Riley Moss from Iowa. Never thought I'd see the day.
Wow. Not since Jason Sehorn, right?
Yeah, I'm glad we've injected race into this, Elijah. Thank you.
Just because of the fact that there's only been one white cornerback in the NFL in the past 20 seasons. So, 20 might be off there, might be like 18, but somewhere around there. There's been one. The dude who went undrafted from Penn State. And then after he ran his 40 at the combine, Deion Sanders said that he can run, if you remember that.
Well, Jason Sehorn, Angie Harmon, that was really the thumbs up I give him, not being an NFL first rounder or even going to a Super Bowl. It was
Nebraska, Pat Fisher, it happens. It happens occasionally.
Vogues, thanks for jumping in, bud. Appreciate seeing you.
Have a good one, guys.
Brennan
that was awkward.
Brennan wrote in about a position that is racially agnostic. Watching the draft last night really puts things into perspective on Nebraska's O-line. I mean, Northwestern had a first-round O-line get taken. NDSU, a guy in the second. No reason that can't be Nebraska guys. So a couple comments there.
Sharpie.
Northwestern and Peter Skronsky, the left tackle for Northwestern, is a freak show of a player. Northwestern kind of got lucky stumbling into that guy, I think. So especially in Ireland, Garrett Nelson it was matched up on him most of the night. And Garrett Nelson's motor. I was watching that matchup a lot. He made Skronsky work, right? Now, Nelson never got home, but damn, did he give him hell all night. And credit to Skronsky, he never let him get home. So, like, Skronsky's ready for the battle. That guy impressed the hell out of me because Nelson just kept coming at the same 110-mile-an-hour clip all damn game. And Skronsky just still handled him. I mean, that guy is super, super impressive.
And quickly here, we also talk about the NDSU guy. That'd be Cody Mock, who Brennan's talking about. And we were talking with Jeremiah.
He's got the best smile.
Yeah. He's got like, the long hair. I think he's got one missing tooth or something like that. Searles was talking about him on Thursday and saying he's like the perfect representation of development along your offensive lines. Came into NDSU like 230 pounds, somewhere around there, and they developed him into a future second-round offensive lineman. And I think Searles was using that as an example of like, this is why development matters on the offensive line for Nebraska. You can take a guy that doesn't look like an offensive lineman and turn him into a second-round guy through 4 years of work.
Sharpie,
go ahead. Well, I think one other quick thing that benefits North Dakota State is, and this is why it's a little bit encouraging what Nebraska is doing. Their strength and conditioning program with individualized plans for certain offensive linemen, I think has benefited. And he's definitely a guy. I agree with you, Elijah. He's a guy to watch. He's a fun guy. And man, you know what? There's whenever you get to this weekend, it hits you that Nebraska hasn't had a first-round guy since 2011. They have not had a AP All-American first team since 2011, and we haven't had an All-American offensive lineman in forever around here. And you can't go that long with those things being, a desert. So it's a little bit frustrating to watch the draft. I will tell you one quick thing before we dive into some other things is you guys were talking about the Illinois defensive players that went off the board. That defense for the last 2 years nobody really talked about outside of if you watched him play in the Big Ten or if you were in Champaign. Ryan Walters and Aaron Henry did a great job with that defense. And that's a big reason why Ryan Walters got hired at Purdue. And then Aaron Henry, who was in charge of the defensive backs, got promoted to defensive coordinator. That's impressive. The Big Ten's had a nice couple of days in the NFL draft. And we've also, I think, had a pretty good day around here because I have not seen a lot of highlights of guys that have been drafted going against Nebraska.
Quickly here, Schmidt, I don't want to jump for that. If there's any stream listeners who are uninitiated with Cody Mock, who we were talking about just a minute ago, here's a quick graphic for you to show you his transformation.
Wow. Oh, that's the great smile.
Yeah.
Dental plan optional in Bison Land in Fargo.
Interesting. Yeah, good for him.
That's pretty good. Sharpie, thoughts on the news of the last 24 hours with Casey Thompson? I want to start there. Are you surprised?
I am, because I will tell you, and there's probably a lot of layers to this, and I would be very curious on how Nebraska feels, because as the week went on, the whole time you're thinking, all right, does Casey see the writing on the wall when Jeff Sims got here? And they talked a lot about Sims, and Sims is their guy, but they still include Casey. And then as he sees spring go on, he's still around, but Jeff Sims had a pretty good spring. But you're thinking there's no indication, and people I talked to said there was no indication that Casey was like, hey, I'm just going to go through spring and then I'm going to leave. And then as we got past Saturday, and it was very curious on Tuesday night how he dropped 30 videos of him throwing the football on Instagram. People close to him were saying, it's probably about a 90% chance that he's going to stay. But then it was interesting, a shift on late Wednesday into Thursday is there were some national guys that were hearing from coaches in their programs that Casey Thompson might be on the wire, that he might be in the portal. And so there's something went on, something maybe, and this happens. I think we're going to find this out with Stephon Wynn, is somebody through back channels got a conversation going, and you look at your options, either one with Wynn, hey, at Nebraska, you're only going to play 15 to 25 snaps, but this is your last year. You think you're going to get taped to go to the NFL? Somebody is saying to somebody with the Wynn representation, hey, you come here, you could get 35 to 45, and you're going to get that NFL tape that you want. I wonder in Casey's case, as spring football ended around the country, teams were looking at their quarterback room, and somebody said, man, we need more competition in that room. We need a guy that could come in and maybe start. And they started to look around. And so all of a sudden, Casey Thompson's name pops up. So I think there's multiple layers to this. I'm a little bit surprised, but then probably as we get further down the road from this, I will probably say I'm not surprised. But I think Nebraska was taken back a little bit.
So your theory right now is it wasn't, if you're to lean one way, it was probably another party reaching out on behalf of the school for the opportunity of these kids versus these kids shopping and looking elsewhere.
Well, I think there's all part of it, Schmitty. I mean, we're seeing this, but there's a lot of stuff. Kids want opportunities. People are always looking. We're seeing that more in basketball where there's stuff that's been going on behind the scenes before you're ever officially in the portal, to give guys options. So that's why I want to reserve going all in on that until I see where they land. Because if Wynn, for example, goes to a place where he's in the same spot he would be at Nebraska, then why did he leave here? Right. Casey's in a situation like if I'm Casey Thompson, I want to play this fall. It's my last year of college football, and I'm probably not going to the NFL, or if I am, I'm an undrafted free agent. So I want to go somewhere where I can play, and probably go somewhere where I got a chance in August to win a job, because it's going to be tough to win a job 7-on-7 this summer and then in a quick fall camp if Jeff Sims has already established himself. But it's not great for Nebraska from the standpoint of, I think there's only 2 guys on this roster prior to yesterday that have the ability to start a football game at Nebraska right now. And one of those guys just left. And the other guy is going to be your QB1 against Minnesota.
Gary Sharp is with us on the Hail Varsity audio program. And
weekend edition.
The weekend edition. We're still branding this thing. We're trying to figure that out. So we talked a little bit about quarterback. Obviously, we touched on Stephon Wynn leaving in the last segment. I would say, Gary, your kind of assessment, Casey aside, Stephon Wynn aside, I don't feel like Nebraska is getting hammered in the portal right now, like does happen with some schools, right? Yeah. Some schools lose some really top-end dudes that are unquestioned starters or really solid depth pieces. So far, a lot of the names that went in, you're like, I understand. Yep, I can see that. What? Yep, okay.
Up until yesterday, Mark, it really, we appreciate Matt Rule's handling of how this portal works because there was no drama. And I don't know if you want to create drama with Casey, I think you still got to reserve till you see where he goes. But for the most part, everybody that's gone into the portal made sense. Noah Pola-Gates, for example, not a surprise to anybody, right, guys? I mean, that's one where was he going to play? I don't know that he was, and that's unfortunate for Nebraska because I really liked him coming out of high school, and I thought in the Polynesian Bowl when he committed to Nebraska, there's a guy that's going to be a game changer. And I remember talking to Travis Fisher, and he said, this guy, if he is focused and dialed in to play football, we got a shot here. Well, that didn't happen. He got injured, and I thought that he had more interest than football, and he didn't see a path to playing very much. But yeah, other than that, Nebraska, it's kind of gone as expected. But I wonder, as this portal comes to an end, guys, man, does Nebraska add a couple of guys? Do they add a defensive tackle? Do they even add a quarterback? Not name Logan Smothers with the door open for him to come back.
Well, and Gary, you
don't have to commit in the next couple of days. You just need to be in the portal.
With how transient rosters are right now, and you'd have to say that Division I college football rosters are among the most transient of any sport on the planet right now. It's crazy how much movement there is. And, we talked, you go back to that infamous phrase of not bringing in Joe Burrow. You think he's better than what we got. I feel like Matt Rule and crew, if they were in place back at that time, I think they bring him in, right? Because it's more like it feels to me that they are truly more about actual competition where it's like, I don't know if he's better than what we got, but if he wants to come here, bring him in and let's find out. So I could see them, Gary, jumping in and potentially even another quarterback if one's really interested, wants to battle, maybe has several years of eligibility, right? And it's like maybe willing to sit behind a Sims, doesn't need to start. I don't think you're going to get the 1-year mercenary guy to come in. And then on defense, so you got Ty Robinson, you got Hutmacher are about the only reliable game-tested bigs on your defensive line, right? Am I forgetting somebody? Like you kind of have to go after one of those dudes in the portal, don't you?
Yeah, and there's a defensive tackle named Gear that just went into the portal that played at Syracuse for the last 2 years with Tony White, and he started last year. So that could be a possibility. I mean, I think you're seeing connections of like guys that go somewhere else. Their former OC or DC or position coach are there, so they have some familiarity with them, and they go to bat. I could see that. I want to go back to quarterback real quick because I think, of course, having 6 scholarship quarterbacks was way too many. I even think just getting the sense from Rule that he thinks 4 scholarship quarterbacks are too many, but you have 3 scholarship quarterbacks, and then you have that walk-on that, is somebody that if he got pressed into service, he wasn't just going to, you'd throw the complete playbook out. Harburg wasn't as bad as my initial viewing on Saturday. I think he's very raw. I think there's something there. The numbers don't look good. Some of the plays don't look good. But on the second watch, I'm like, you know what? There's at least like something there. But I don't know about him starting a football game right now in his career. So I think you have to look at the portal. Or, there's another question of what's the status of Chubba Purdy? Not leaving, but is he going to be in the mix to be the number 3 guy? It's all these discussions that have to go on here pretty quickly about that quarterback room with the departure of Casey.
Sharpie, let's spend 2 seconds here on Purdy and his upside. He has started before. he kind of settled in against Michigan before he got hurt. Had one drive, and Nebraska led Minnesota 10-0. Was able to lead to points before Nebraska went off of the game plan that was working. So I think you've got some uniformity with the quarterback in Sims, Purdy, and Harburg that you can incorporate the run game into what you're calling play wise versus Casey being your pass first guy. So I think you've got a similar offense for all three quarterbacks in your room right now. Where does Purdy need to jump? Are you worried about his ability to throw? I'm that way with Harburg right now. Again, knee-jerk reaction. I think both those guys have some major athleticism, but if you've got to win the game making a pass or to completion, Nebraska could be in trouble again at this point.
Yeah, I think the thing with Purdy that stands out, and I agree with everything you said, Schmidt, is the decision making. Is the quick read, like read and throw, instead of you see it and you pause and then you say, okay, now I'm going to throw it. Prime examples at the end of the game on Saturday. And I think that's with Harburg, who just, I see Harburg as very raw, but at least there's kind of something there. I don't know about Purdy. I think the decision making, I think his mechanics sometimes get away from him. But it's Marcus Satterfield. It's going to be a thing where he's got to get that number 2 guy coached up now and ready to go. And what can they do when they get that person coached up? But there's encouraging signs with Satterfield, because I thought Jeff Sims, if we all watched Jeff Sims' film prior to him coming to Nebraska, there were things that were wrong with his footwork. There were things that were wrong with his decision making. There were things that were also about, hey, I got a big boy arm and I'm just going to be able to throw it into a tight window, even though it gets picked or knocked away. And I thought those things improved over the course of the spring. I thought you saw a guy, and Sims is not a finished product by any means, and there's still some challenges to him. But I thought in terms of just being a quarterback, I thought he had made some improvement. And that's in a short amount of time working with Marcus Satterfield. So maybe Satterfield, now that he has 15 practices with those guys that we just mentioned, he can bring them along so that if pressed into service, and remember, Jeff Sims hasn't made it through a whole year, those guys, you don't miss a beat. They're plug and play right into the program. I think another wild card here, guys, and I don't know if you've already talked about it, is, man, Logan Smothers. He's a grad transfer. Mm-hmm. He said there is the option for him to come back, but is he going to come back if he's not the number 2 guy? And they don't know much about him because they didn't see him during the spring.
I'd feel best out of what Nebraska has after Sims. I'd feel way better having to go win a football game with Smothers than the other 2 right now.
Yeah. Totally agree. Still don't feel great about it, though, to be honest. But yeah.
Well, I think that brings up things. An interesting, just general point about the quarterbacks that I want to get Gary's take on. And that's how important are these quarterbacks in the quarterback position going to be to the offense? Because when you look back at the Scott Frost years and the Mike Riley years, it's pretty clear that the quarterback was the most important position in the offense. But I don't think that's always been the case at Nebraska. When you look back to not only the 90s, but even the Bo Pelini years, I don't think the quarterback was the most important position group on the offense. So do you think that Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield's plan for the offense is to have, a quarterback be the most important position in terms of the success of the offense, or do they want to have it be, the running backs in the offense?
What do you build it around?
I mean, I think there was a reason why. Yeah, I think there was a reason why the offensive lineman led the team out on the tunnel walk the other day. I mean, they focused on that offensive line that we're going to run the football. And so that's a great point, Elijah, is it's not the Adrian Martinez offense where it's all about number 2 in the backfield. It's about running the football and don't hurt us. Now, Sims can make some plays, and, his deep ball and his relationship with Billy Kemp and how all those, the wide receiver room plays out will be another part of what we need to watch during the summer. But I think Nebraska wants to run the football first and foremost. And so the quarterback is part of that run game. But in terms of the quarterback has got to win it for us every Saturday, I think they want to get further and further away from it. That's a really, really good point. So that kind of, that maybe helps some of the younger guys, but at least Sims gives you an option that if the running game's not working, and even the quarterback run game and that element, which is so fantastic in the game of college football, that he can at least complete some passes for
you. Gary, let's switch over to baseball. And the Cornhuskers have hit a skid.
Ouch, no.
They've hit a skid, and this happens in baseball, and that's kind of what I want to get into is, how much of this is maybe just a temporary skid, which again, it really does happen. Like, it's just part of when you play so many games, you'll go through a stretch. Nebraska gets swept at Iowa. They finally exercise the demons against UNO. Then they fall to South Dakota State. And then last night, lose to Minnesota. So you've now dropped, 5 of your last 6. Let's do some silver lining, though, real quick. Silver lining.
Season's almost
Drew
over.
Christo? No, Chris. Nebraska's been searching for just another reliable arm out of the pen the whole year, right? Yeah. Shanneman and Buns have done okay, but honestly just okay. Been kind of hit and miss there for those guys. Drew Christo, who is built like Roger Clemens, he is not Roger Clemens, who is built like Roger Clemens and is a true power fastball pitcher, right? There's not a lot of those guys out there. Mm-hmm. He has been just a wild freaking stallion since he came to Lincoln. Has no idea where the ball's going, but very promising outing against the Mavericks. Do you see that as, he didn't walk many guys. He struck out 8 in 4 innings.
Yep.
I mean, he had command, 66 pitches in 4 innings. It's not great, but it's okay. It's pretty good. Do you take much out of that outing? Do you think maybe it's starting to settle with it? It's clearly been a mental thing with him. Do you take some stock into that? Do you think Nebraska maybe is like, okay, might have to extend some trust to that guy and give him some meaningful innings on weekends?
Yes. So that was encouraging Tuesday night because he had command of his fastball and he didn't lose his confidence. There was the 4th inning of that game, he gave up a leadoff double and, the inning did not implode. And they brought him along shortly. That's a project by Jeff Christie and Will Bolt. And kudos to them because they had a guy that had a lack of confidence who has this big boy professional arm that had completely lost his compass. And they've slowly brought him back. So that's encouraging. But I don't know, guys. This feels, and it's weird because 10 days ago, I was thinking, all right, this team is primed where they got a lot of things going. They're offensively, they're good enough. They can overcome some hiccups with their starting rotation. They're always going to be a midweek mess. But on the weekends, they should be able to hold their own. That was 10 days ago. Then they went to Iowa and they were not competitive at all. And they got bludgeoned. Then Tuesday night was encouraging, but they do such a great job of being inconsistent. And then they have Wednesday night against South Dakota State. And then last night was a mess. They got off to a slow start. And as expected, Nebraska comes back, but then they just completely fall apart there in the 9th inning. And a lot of it was about execution and the little simple things. And that's concerning because you're right, Mark. It's a long baseball season and you ride the ups and downs. But this team is so inconsistent that you can't figure them out. And this is the wrong time because it feels like on April 29th, with the Big Ten tournament a month away, and the only way Nebraska gets in the NCAA tournament is to win the thing, is the season is slowly starting to get away from them. Emmett Olson gave you signs last night that he is back to the beginning of the year. But, man, what are you going to get today? You're facing a guy that throws 103 miles an hour who might have a bad record and a bad ERA, but you're also a team that strikes out a lot, and you don't know what you're getting out of your starter. So they're in the danger zone. I didn't think I'd be saying this 10 days ago, but it feels like the season is starting to slip away.
Yeah, and Gary, I'm with you on that sentiment. So at what point, or is there a point that Will Bolt starts looking over his shoulder in terms of Trev Alberts making a switch with the baseball program? I mean, you're just a couple years removed from a Big Ten championship, but based on how the last 2 years is going, it doesn't quite feel like this program is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, the vibe isn't great right now, and I know that Will is extremely frustrated. There are things that he's asking his team to do that he sends them out on the field and they don't get it done. So he has to figure out, okay, why is there there's a gap there? Will is fine. Will is fine. I mean, next year would be, if they don't make the NCAA tournament this year, next year is a huge year for them. And it's going to be an interesting year because you're going to lose the middle of your infield. So there'll be some pressure there. He's fine now, but if they don't make the NCAA tournament, next year is one of those, for all the men's sports except for football, that, basketball and baseball, to be like, hey, this might be a make it or break it season. But it's still early, but they've got to, today is a big day for Nebraska. Tomorrow is a big day for Nebraska because it does, again, feel like it's starting to slip out of their grip just the way they're playing. They're talented enough. They should not be giving up 5 in the 9th inning and losing 9-7 to that Minnesota team. They shouldn't.
No.
They shouldn't. They're too good.
No.
And I think you might have even undersold next season, like the importance of the finish of this year, because not only are you losing the middle of your infield, you're losing the 2 best players on your roster in Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews. Likely. Those guys are likely going to the draft. So I don't think you can undersell how important the finish of the season is going to be.
You got a couple guys you can build around though, right, Gary? Like you got Carey on the hot corner, Josh Caron at catcher. You got some pieces coming back.
Yeah, another frustrating thing about last night, and it just kind of shows the inconsistency of this team. It was set up perfectly for Nebraska in the bottom of the ninth. You got 2 on, you got 2 out. They've made a pitching change. Bryce Matthews is at the plate, and what are we thinking? All right, he's going to hit one onto the berm, and they'll forget about this game. They'll forget about the top of the ninth. All they'll remember is the bottom of the ninth. When you're at the plate, you can't stand there on 0-2 and take a called third strike. Yep. You just can't. You're too good of a player, and that just adds to the frustrating part of this team right now is they're so damn inconsistent, and they shouldn't. They're better than what they are right now, but the rest of this weekend's pretty important because Minnesota now can say, hey, man, we might come into Lincoln and win a series. And we've got our ace, so to speak, throwing today. Yeah, next 2 days are I think are going to tell you about the inner workings of that clubhouse with Nebraska.
Yeah. Sharpie, good stuff as always, man. Appreciate you jumping on with us, talking some spring football, some baseball, and little NFL. Have yourself a weekend, and we'll round you up again next Saturday, bud.
Hey, I heard you guys when you were talking to Vogues. So Trey Palmer, I agree, 4th round. O'Shawn Mathis, 5th round, 6th round,
6th. Okay,
I'm going 6th.
They like
it would almost make sense for the way Nebraska football has been trending of late that they have a Mr. Irrelevant this year.
Sure,
Adrian Martinez, Mr. Irrelevant. Book it. But I also had Trey Palmer going in the 3rd, so take all my NFL draft predictions with a complete grain of salt.
Yes.
Well,
we shall see.
Hey, it's one of those days Nebraska's going to have to get a guy drafted that they developed, that came here as a freshman and worked his way through the program. Great for Trey Palmer. Somebody's getting a speed demon. O'Shawn Mathis will be interesting as well because he's probably not a starter in the NFL, but that would be good at least for Nebraska to get 2 guys drafted. But I'm happy. I think Trey will be one of the first guys off the board today.
That'll be good. Sharpie, take care, buddy. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Gary. Yeah,
appreciate
the baseball
Sharpie
thing, man. The baseball thing has kind of got me concerned. He's right. It's 5 of 6, man. It's not like you're losing to, LSU in those 5.
No, you're losing to teams that
you
should outclass, and you don't, and you're not out doing the little things. You're not. It's not that they're not competing; they are, but they're just not executing.
Well, they're top 3 fielding, ERA, batting average. That normally, baseball stats don't lie.
You have too many dudes on this roster that are studs, and you're not getting it done.
And the problem is, Schmidt, it's something we talked about probably a month and a half ago. This team still doesn't have a guy that you can turn to. You need 3 outs. It's high leverage. You know what? There's a batter on first. We're in the 9th inning. There's no outs. You need to come in and get 3 outs. Nebraska still doesn't have a guy they can turn to in the bullpen. Over the past 3 weeks, they have left Shea Shannon out there for 1 too many innings. It was the top of the 10th inning at home against UNO a couple weeks ago, where he starts it off with a single and a hit by a pitch, and the wheels fall off in the 10th. And then last night, you keep him out for 1 too many innings, and he gives up a few runs in the 9th, and that ends it for you. So that's like emblematic of the Husker baseball program this season, is that you don't have a guy you can turn to to go get 3 outs or go get 6 outs, or you know what? It's a high leverage moment. You're up by 1. There's a runner on first. You can come in and get 1 or 2 outs. Nebraska doesn't have that guy they can turn to right now, and it's been a huge, huge problem for this baseball team.
Well, we'll see if they get it handled. We'll be back at you next Saturday at 7:30, the weekend edition. And make sure you subscribe, download, and follow along. Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. And then the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, with the weekend edition, the entire show or the segments with our interview guests. Kraynak and Elijah, appreciate you both, man. We'll check in with you next Saturday.
Godspeed, sir.
Appreciate you, boys.
Okay. All right, y'all.